Welcome back. Daily Graphic starts this morning and says President condemns Delta Force for their lawlessness, cancels vehicle sales to government officials. Fallout from the retreat yesterday. Daily Graphic has that story. Also on the front page of the Daily Graphic, 8 remanded in custody for allegedly aiding 13 Delta Force members to escape and fire guards Kumasi Central Market. The Daily Graphic has that. Heritage says UN condemns Delta Force attacks and calls for investigations into operations of the group. Comes with a photograph of Mohammed bin Chambers, the special rep of the UN Secretary General. Daily Guide captures that story from the Pediasi Lodge. Nana bans sale of government vehicles. And then also 8 Delta Force caged over court invasion. One key here is that court seizes Chinese Galamsey ship. The BNFT talks about 800,000 tons cocoa target to be exceeded. That's according to the chief executive officer. And then seed trade to grow by 10%. The Ghanaian Times carries a photograph of the fire yesterday in Kumasi. Also on the front page, President bans purchase of new vehicles and 8 Delta Force members remanded. The Daily Statesman, we're committed to serve Ghana. President Akufo-Addo assures, and Euro get in $118 million dubious payment over controversial hospital projects. The finder says Delta Force actions regrettable. President Akufo-Addo says no wavering on rule of law. And of course, several other newspapers are here. But these are the ones that we can tell you what's happening on their front pages. My guest this morning is a member of parliament for the Mion constituency, Honorable Mohammed Abdulaziz. Good morning. I hope you're doing great.
I'm good.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.
And also from the camp of the NPP, a member of the communication team, Agban Kumeni. Grateful for your time too.
Thank you, Brian.
So let's start with the president retreat yesterday. A lot of fallout from there. Daily Graphic, the Finder, the Daily Guide, all of them have the story. But a quick look at the Daily Graphic this morning. On page 3, it says that President Akufo-Addo has condemned acts of lawlessness committed by some members of the Delta Force, a political vigilante group, saying the law will work at ensuring justice. The events in Kumasi are being brought systematically under control in the way that they should be, and will assure the nation that we're not wavering from the commitment that we made, that we're going to serve Ghana under the conditions of the rule of law, he said. On the recent development, President Akufo-Addo said the criminal and judicial systems of the country were addressing the matter. He was speaking to a journalist at the retreat at the Pediasi Lodge at Debris in the Eastern region. Now, let me start with you, Komeni. Some have suggested that the president seemed to have come in too late with this condemnation, particularly in the fact that even when he addressed the nation, his first State of the Nation address, he spoke, asked these groups to cease the operations, and yet they were still in operation. The president says the rule of law, we're going to ensure that it works. It should be hopeful that the rule of law is being adhered to, the persons are in court, and so we should all be hopeful that at least we will get somewhere with this particular issue of vigilante groups.
First of all, let me say a very good morning to your viewers. I do not think that the president's intervention is late. Right from January 2017, the president has been consistent in his view that acts of lawlessness should not be entertained. And since January 2017, he has repeatedly charged institutions mandated to enforce law and order to respond to these acts of lawlessness across the country. I feel that as a country, it is important we move away from seeking to hold individuals responsible for the maintenance of law and order to get institutions to act. Because you see, the police service is established by law to ensure law and order. People are recruited into the service, trained and paid by the Ghanaian taxpayer to ensure that there's law and order across the country. What they require is the strong political backing to be able to function without fear or favor. That has been given them since January 2017. if they are not living up to the task, it is important to hold that institution responsible and not an individual. Okay, when we seek to make it look like it is the responsibility of an individual to ensure that there's maintenance of law and order, what we are doing, in effect, is to undermine institutions established by law and charged with responsibility to doing some of these things. I remember in January 2017, the president invited the then IGP, Mr. John Kudolo, to the Jubilee House and charged him to make sure that the acts of lawlessness which were going on in the country were brought under control. The new IGP, when the president outdoored him, reiterated the same commitment. So it is up to us as citizens to demand of these institutions that they must live up to their responsibilities. I feel that we cannot build a democracy if we continue the cycle of vengeance. Many people would attempt to justify these things on the basis of the bitter experience that NPP supporters went through after a similar change of government in 2008. But
your party started in 2000.
Well, you see,
when Mr. Rawlings was out of power.
And that is why we must bring finality to the matter, because we cannot
continue. So you should
continue.
have ended it, don't you think so?
That is the
Once you started this issue of attacking people who are out of power, you should have ended it.
That is why the president has charged the Attorney General and ministers in charge of security to make sure that this particular matter is dealt with conclusively according to established laws, in order to send a strong signal to the Ghanaian people that violence and acts of lawlessness would not be tolerated.
If the police are unable to deal with vigilante groups, for instance, when they started seizing property and there were calls for the president to speak, the NPP said the police should act and not the president. And the president came to address parliament. Then he asked these groups to stop, and yet it went on. You think that we should continue to look up to the police, even when the president makes a case for these groups to stop the operation and they continue? We should still ask the police to go ahead.
You see, those who have the capacity to enforce the law across the country, the police service.
If they fail, who do we blame?
Of course, if they fail, then the responsibility, the blame must go to them, because you see...
Not the president.
Not the president, because you see, the president can only grant them that political will, because these people presumably are members of the ruling party. But the president has given that indication.
You don't believe they are members of the party?
And that firm
you don't believe they are members of the NPP?
They're members of the NPP. But you see, the president has given that firm assurance that, look, go after these people, because you have a president who has contributed significantly in expanding the frontiers of democracy and rule of law. Such a president cannot condone acts which constitute grave assaults on the judiciary.
Is condemnation enough? You said that the police would need the support of the president. Now, he's condemned the act. In fact, this is not the first time. Is that enough to give the police that courage to go ahead and do its work?
Well, the condemnation signals that we are determined to do things differently as a government. The condemnation isn't just coming from the party, but also from government. You cannot find anybody in government supporting this act. It shows that we are
Kennedy Japan did not support the
Kennedy Japan is not a member of government.
He's not a member of the party. You said the condemnation came from party and government. He's not a member of the party.
Through his leadership, has condemned those acts and has equally called on the police to act. Members of government have roundly condemned the act and says that it has no place under an NPP.
Let me go to Honorable Aziz. I come back to you. Is condemnation enough? Some have raised concerns that this seems to be a political issue and that the president acting will bring an end to it.
Good morning to our viewers. This is a rather very unfortunate development. Ghana has become one of the shining examples to other African countries when it comes to multi-party democracy and the rule of law. We must recognize that having a democratic culture is not just about having elections and a winner being declared. It also means upholding the principles and values of rule of law, respect for human rights, and guaranteeing the basic needs of the people. If we have this in mind, then we would be able to move from where we are now. As a country, we have been able to consolidate a democracy. What we need to do is to entrench it. Some of these developments draws us back, and we must all condemn that. You see, like you indicated, this issue has been with us since 2001. I must admit that it repeated itself in 2009. But the scale and the level we are seeing today is unprecedented. That must be very,
That's
very
according to your description.
Well, yes. You know, we haven't had an organized system, structure that would go on their way to attack our courts in a broad daylight, go and free people from the courtroom. This is unprecedented.
Your Azoka boys would have done same if they were given the go.
I don't think President Mahama or any leader of the NDC would have tolerated this. You see, this issue started with the invisible forces, and like you were talking about the seizure of public properties. When the new regime took over, it started with a seizure of public properties, toll booths, public toilets, all manner of institutions, national health insurance institutions, offices were being attacked and seized. You see, that is rather unfortunate. That's when we should have nipped it in the bud, but we allowed it to fester. Now they have escalated their activities to some high levels of impunity. What I think is a problem is that these people are enjoying some tacit approval of political leadership, and that must be made very, very clear.
That is your allegation.
Kennedy Ajapong is a member of parliament on the ticket of the NPP. He's on record to have expressed support for them. In fact, he told the Ghanaian public how he used to travel to Kumasi to mobilize and resource these young men.
Later on, he withdrew that support. So the key question we're asking is...
That was an afterthought.
Yes, of course, after people have condemned the issue.
The Ashanti regional chairman of the MPP, Chairman Wuntumi, has done the same, declared support for them, and even alluded today using these same words when they were in opposition. And it all started when the MPP were in opposition. In fact, they had made it very clear that they had lost trust and confidence in the Ghana Police Service, and they had to recruit their own race, if you like, a parallel police service in this country. Remember, prior to the 2016 general elections, some 3 South Africans were arrested somewhere in the central region, and they were found training some men and women belonging to the MPP in some of these things, somewhere in central region. In fact, the company that brought those 3 South Africans was the Delta Security.
Yeah, I think the case is
force.
Even in court.
Exactly.
So
you can tell that Delta forces emerging from Delta Securities. You can tell the connection. My worry now has to do. You see, President Nana-Addo should go beyond just mere rhetoric.
So condemnation isn't
enough. It is not enough. In fact, the president is the, apart from being the executive president, he is also the commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces. In fact, Vice President Bawumia is the chairman of the Police Council.
What should they do?
What they should do they should go beyond just calling on the police to act. You see, the political patronage is what is actually killing us. In fact, politicians have turned ourselves into monsters that, you see, once you belong to the ruling class, then it becomes very, very difficult for the police to go after you. You see, remember these boys told us on radio, the Delta Force guys told us on radio, that when they were going to court, the 13 people who were arraigned before court, they were assured that the case had been dealt with and that they had handled the issue. It was just a matter of they presenting themselves before the law court and they'll be freed. If that is true, who made that call? Who told them that?
Okay, if that is true,
what was the arrangement between whoever and the courts or the judge? And so President Nana-Addo You see, the basic mandate of a president, and for that matter, a government, is to ensure peace and security. If you are unable to guarantee peace and security in this country, you cannot lead us to attain our aspirations.
You have not told me what the president and vice president should do. What exactly should they do?
You see, I believe in the principle of the ultimate responsibility.
And that is what?
The ultimate responsibility means that at the end of the day, the president and the executive must take responsibility. They cannot run away from responsibility. In fact, the president, the national security minister, the IGP, the minister for interior, the minister for defense, all of them are maintained by the taxpayer. And they must do more than just calling on the police to act. There must be an end to this rather unfortunate incident that we are witnessing.
Are they not allowing the rule of law to work? These persons have been arrested. They are in court. The decision to jail them or not is that of the court. Is that not what the responsibility is?
I agree with you that it lies within the courts to either jail them or free them. But I think that the president, and for that matter, the government, still can do something about it.
Like what?
They must send us a clear signal that they will not condone some of these acts.
So the president has condemned the act.
And that they would give the police that political will to act and act swiftly. But like I indicated earlier, the principle of ultimate responsibility, I would condemn the police for some of these things. But at the end of the day, it is the president who appoints the IGP.
I see.
It's the vice president who remains as the chairman of the police council. And so we cannot be told that, no, just go and deal with the police, and that when the police feels that is it. No.
I see.
No.
Komeni, should he's suggesting that, of course, you think it is the duty of the police service, but he thinks that it lies squarely with the president and the vice to deal with it once and for all. Briefly,
well,
let's wrap up on this
maintaining peace and order, of course, is the responsibility of the police. Prosecuting crimes, because what happened is a crime, all right, against the republic. That is the responsibility of the executive arm of government. As we speak, the people are being prosecuted by the Attorney General, all right?
Right.
The Attorney General took them to court, ensured that they are remanded. And like you indicated, the issue of their conviction lies squarely within the jurisdiction of the court, and the executive cannot interfere in that regard. What the executive can do is to make sure that these people are prosecuted for committing a crime against the republic. Okay, and that is why everybody collectively must support the effort of the president to ensure that this criminal prosecution is successful. Submissions like it is unprecedented, it has never happened, you know, would elicit reactions which may appear as a justification to what happened.
What reaction are you
because
talking
he knows,
about? I mean, this is the first time a group in Ghana has gone to a court and freed suspects.
It is not the first time. He knows that last year a similar incident happened in the Tamale High Court. He knows by his party supporters.
Well, tell me about it. Where NDC supporters went and freed
pulled
the
the cutlass, butchered people, you know, in the heat of the Inus of Hussein Haruna Idrisu power struggle. He's fully aware.
And freed suspects.
So no, go ahead.
Not freed suspect.
Okay.
We're talking about assault on our judicial system. Trust unleashed upon a judge presiding over a matter. And I'm saying to him that this is not the first time that it has happened in our court, though condemnable. Secondly, I cannot accept the claim that what has happened since 2017, January 2017, is unprecedented in our political history. He's fully aware that in 2009, five people were gruesomely murdered right in front of a police station. As we speak, not a single person has been prosecuted.
Is that why Delta Force is behaving like this?
No, but the difference here is that we're not just talking. We are prosecuting those responsible for these acts of lawlessness to send a signal.
Is that case, the other case not in court too?
Not at all. Not at all. Not even one person was arrested in connection with the murder of 5 NPP activists. We are saying, we are saying today that impunity will not be tolerated, even if you are a supporter of the governing party. Once you misconduct yourself, the law will take its natural course.
I'm grateful.
Well,
a quick one.
Just to react to what my brother has just talked about. You see, you must make a clear distinction between two people having some level of misunderstanding within the court premises.
Wow.
Oh, make that one clearly different from people
where he agreed that no suspects were freed in that case. So, I think
exactly. So this is not, you can't just compare what's happening now to those instances. This is unprecedented, and trust me, when the Muntie Tree issue came up, President Mahama was virtually hanged by your party just for some verbal assault on our judges. Today, it wasn't a verbal assault. It was physical.
But that's why we're different.
I'm grateful.
In handling this matter.
I'm grateful.
How different are you about it?
We're prosecuting them.
Proceed. We are watching.
Okay, grateful. Now, we still stay on the presidency because the president has banned the purchase of new vehicles for government officials. The Daily Ghanaian Times has a story. It says that there's a ban placed on the purchase of new vehicles for members of government. That aside, the president has scrapped a policy that allowed some government officials to buy official cars upon leaving office. President Akufo-Addo announced this at an interaction with the media yesterday at the closing of a 3-day retreat of members of central government. The president directive comes in the wake of missing cars from the state's fleet of vehicles since he took over in January. And of course, it goes on and on and on. The Daily Guide has the same story and says that no more will the government buy new cars. The president said no matter how dilapidated the cars are, government functionaries are being asked to use those cars until perhaps when government has the funds to buy new cars. Now, the president said there are difficult times for Ghanaian people and we should be seen to be acting and respecting that. So that's the story on the Daily Guide and the Ghanaian Times. Let's begin from the ban on the sale of new cars. Honorable Aziz, this is an economy that the president said is not in good shape, and so this ban on the purchase of new cars is in the right direction.
It is a call in the right direction. I think that I share with the president that his government would not be purchasing new vehicles for government appointees. Where I disagree with him is where he sought to paint the economy that we bequeathed to him as a very gloomy one. That's not true. We in the NDC have always maintained that we bequeathed to President Addo and the NPP a very robust economy. Of course, we admitted that we're going through some challenges as a country in respect of our economy, but the economy was not as bad as he may want us to believe. As for they not buying new vehicles for their use, it is a decision that I think I respect. But I listened to him this morning. He said they are not purchasing vehicles for now. So we must be very mindful of the phrase "for now," whether it's going to be for a week, a month, a year, or for the whole of the 4 years that he would have the mandate to rule. And so that is not too clear. But I think that as a government, if they think that the vehicles that they've come to meet are still in good condition, and that can help them do run the state, that's good for us, especially that they have a very large government, about 110 ministers. You can imagine if they were to buy a Land Cruiser for each of them and buy them a saloon car, that would have been a toll on our economy. Of course, perhaps it's just only the vehicles, because I know for sure that they would want to either build or rent houses for government appointees, especially their ministers and deputy ministers. It is part of their conditions of service. And so we should also know from the president, if that directive is just in respect of cars or some other perks that goes with the office of a minister and a deputy minister. On the policy of outgoing ministers and government appointees not buying
the official
vehicles, you see, he needs to come clear, because the policy as it stands now has to do with saloon cars. And so no government official leaving office is allowed to buy a four-wheel drive, a Land Cruiser, no. And so that policy is not too clear what he's talking about. Is he referring to the saloon cars that currently the policy allows them to buy? Because I'm aware that even in 2008, when the NPP lost elections and were leaving power, their ministers and deputy ministers and other government appointees bought their saloon cars. In fact, reference is always been made to their director of communications, Nana Akufo-Addo, who bought his official saloon car at a cost of 800 Ghana cedis. I'm not sure 800 Ghana cedis can buy some motorbikes in Accra here. And so that must be made very, very clear. Whether it is in respect of just the saloon cars or he's talking of the four-wheel drives. And so that is where I think that the president needs to come clear. They may seem very populist, just trying to court the sympathy of the Ghanaian public. But whatever it is, I think it is a good call. And let's see how they would go.
Committee, the last time such a directive was issued by the then president, former President Mahama, it was flouted because when the NDC was leaving office, several state vehicles were bought. Some have suggested that President Addo's call to not to allow officials to buy the official card should be backed with something more concrete instead of just a statement.
I agree with the suggestion that the directive should be crystallized into law.
Right.
That even if we are going to allow people to purchase public vehicles, it should be open up for everybody, so that
on the open market,
so that we get value for money. But the most important thing for now is to send a signal that government would not approve of any such move, because we inherited a lot of the vehicles. Maybe some people might be contemplating that because they are old vehicles, they're due to be purchased. Clearly, to send that signal that it will not be tolerated is worth commending. We need to move beyond that into the next step, which is to back it up with law, to make sure that it becomes binding on everybody and successive governments in the future. Because we cannot continue to have a situation where every 2 years, vehicles bought by the taxpayers are shared among politicians. I've always said that if we do not rein in the conduct of politicians, it certainly would pose a serious threat to our democracy. And I'm happy that the president is making sure that some of these things are dealt with. As for its benefits on our economy, it is not in doubt that it will benefit the nation, because we're going to spend millions of dollars to procure new vehicles for ministers and deputy ministers. Those monies would be channeled into areas that are critical to our national economy. There's also no dispute. My friend was arguing that they left an economy in a better shape. That certainly is not supported by the facts, because the facts suggest that the economy we inherited was in a very terrible shape. We recorded a growth rate, the lowest in over 2 decades. Virtually all targets set in 2016 were missed, except gross foreign assets, which exceeded the 3 months import cover that they set for themselves. Industry recorded negative 1.2%, and so the economy was not in a very good shape, and it is only important that the Akufo-Addo government takes measures which will not burden the Ghanaian economy more. And this particular directive is worth commending, but I wish to see it crystallize into law.
I'm grateful. Now, let's move on to this story, a court story here on the Daily Guide. Court seizes Chinese Galamsey ship. The story is suggesting that the Sekende High Court has ordered the seizure of the Water Home, that's the name of the vessel, and other equipment on the river, and Cobra, purportedly built by some Chinese illegal miners for their operations on the river. The well-built Water Home also referred to as Chinese FPSO, is covered with tents and mosquito netting. The Chinese have allegedly built a toilet in the structure on the river, surrounded by their mining equipment. The court also remanded 5 Chinese and 5 Ghanaians suspected to be illegal miners into police custody to reappear before it on Monday, April 24. Now, this is to give the court ample time to look for a certified Chinese interpreter to help interpret the proceedings to the Chinese nationals, explaining why the court ordered for the seizure of the equipment. One of the suspects, lawyer Samuel Erickson Abaka, said that the order was in line with the law governing small-scale mining. He said, according to the law, items which are used in small-scale mining operations ought to be taken over by the prosecutor since the case is under investigation. Now, the fight against Galamsey, perhaps beginning to see some support from the judicial service. But the key concerns with fighting Galamsey, Honorable Aziz, has been the fact that now the court can jail offenders, but it doesn't stop it because there are people behind this whole process who are funding it, and so this is where the difficulty is. Government's effort at stopping it. We're told the ultimatum expires in just about a week or so. Are we perhaps on course to dealing with Galamsey?
Thank God that the media seem to have developed a very, very serious appetite in this story of we fighting the Galamsey menace as a country. Rather unfortunate development. You see, it's not just the Galamsey activities. Recently, the issue has been the effects of the Galamsey activities on our water bodies.
Right.
I have also listened to some other people talk about sand winning and other activities that threatens our water bodies, our farmlands. The threat to our ecosystem must be protected. The government has a duty to fight it. It is not an issue for just one agency or ministry. The Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, the Ministry of Mines and Energy, the Ministry of Interior and Defense must all collaborate to be able to bring the issue of the Galamsey activities under control. I think that's important, especially when you look at the effects that it has on our economy. Small-scale mining is allowed by our laws, and people are engaged in it lawfully. But what is wrong and what must be condemned is when foreigners, especially Chinese, people have always maintained that you don't mention Chinese because it may have some diplomatic implications. But no, we all know that these are the people who are mostly engaged in the Galamsey activities. And so for them to come into Ghana,
not all of them.
Not all of them, of course. For them to come into Ghana with all manner of equipment to take our resources away, destroy our water bodies, farmlands are destroyed, kids don't go to school, they are engaged in these Galamsey activities. We have a duty as a country to fight it. The previous regime of President Mahama did something about it. An inter-ministerial team was formed when the Honorable Yunusa Fusini was at the Ministry of Lands and Forestry. I don't really know what the findings were, but I think that as a country, we should begin to take some of these things serious. So let's see how the new regime would also approach this matter. But I think that collectively we should all support government to fight it. Our chiefs must be involved. Our local government authorities must be involved. In fact, it is Ghanaians who sometimes front for them. You go to Circle, the issue of petty trading, the retail trading is reserved for only the Ghanaian indigents. But you go to Circle and Ghanaians front for Nigerians and other nationals to engage in retail businesses. So sometimes it is our own attitude. It is our own attitude. We front for them, our chiefs. There has been this rumor of some traditional authorities and some people in politics also being engaged in this rather unfortunate industry. I don't know how true it is, but I think that we should carry out a thorough investigation and find a lasting solution to the problem.
Komeni, the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources talks about a three-pronged approach to deal with Galamsey. The advocacy, education that has started. In fact, he also talks about the fact that at the tail end of it, there'll be some military combat to get these persons off. Now, we're seeing the ultimatum about to expire. Perhaps these are signs that the government is serious about stopping Galamsey now.
Oh yes, the government is very serious about ending the menace now, because apart from the fact that it is illegal, we as a nation has a responsibility to our environment. It is not just for those of us in this generation, but it is also for future generations. And we must ensure that we employ all the necessary mechanisms to protect it for the future generation. So the government is determined to ensure that we end it once and for all. So we're going to engage everybody, the media, the traditional authority, the military, the police, to make sure that we enforce our laws. Small-scale mining is not entirely bad. It must be done lawfully, and it must be done in a regulated manner so that it would have no effect on the environment. But the current state is so bad. The destruction of our water bodies, farmlands, cocoa farms, I mean, it's just not the best. And I believe that this time we must put an end to it once and for all.
Are we able to do that?
We will do that. I trust that the Minister of Natural Resources, Mr. John Amewu, he's a very serious person, very, very disciplined person. And I believe that he would see through this commitment of the government to make sure that we bring an end to this matter once and for all. We must also tighten up our borders. Sometimes you ask yourself, how do these people get into our country with all the equipments? The Foreign Affairs Ministry has a role to play in this. Our border control officers would equally have a significant role to play, so that at the end of the day, we do not just allow everybody to come into our country with all sorts of equipment to engage in all sorts of activities. We must make sure that our laws work.
Some have suggested that because some politicians, traditional authorities, in fact, virtually the whole society is involved in these illegal mining, it's a very difficult thing to stop.
It is not the difficult thing, because you see, we should desist from making the politician feel like he has immunity under our law. The point is that these are crimes. A crime is a crime, whether it is committed by a politician or a chief or a journalist. It is still a crime. We cannot be jailing people for stealing banana whilst we encourage politicians to collaborate with foreigners to destroy our water bodies. It doesn't matter who is involved. Once it is established that the person has committed a crime against the people of Ghana, he must be taken through the process of the law and punished, because that is the only way we can deter people from engaging in these activities. But if we investigate and we find out that politicians are involved, chiefs are involved, even though we recognize that it is a crime, but we will let go because of the personalities involved, then we are inviting trouble for ourselves and for future generations. So I would want us to enforce the law, regardless who is involved. Once crimes are committed, those responsible for the commission of the crime must be punished.
But that's where the politicians want to, for instance, order the arrest of somebody involved in the act, and yet he is behind it. And how does it work? Well, and that is why I said that for every action, there are consequences, there are sanctions under our law. Once it is established that this person is involved, is collaborating with a foreigner to commit a crime, because to engage in an illegal mining is to commit a crime under our laws. You apply the appropriate sanctions, even if the person is a minister of state. Ministers are not immune from our criminal laws. The fact that you are a minister, if you go and commit murder, are you going to get away with it? So similarly, if a minister is engaged in galamsey, he should be made to face the full consequence of the law. It is only on that basis that we can signal to foreigners, because what's happening in Ghana cannot happen in China. Okay? People have been executed in China for crimes that are as little as what is happening in Ghana. So why are we not able to enforce the law?
Because the thing is not about promulgating new laws. We have all
the laws around.
all the
In fact,
laws,
the
all
act
the
is
policies,
illegal. I mean,
all the mechanisms are there. What is required is the political will to enforce the law to the latter. Once that will is there, I believe that we should be able to end this matter.
I agree largely with you that we have a sanction regime and that we must exact it appropriately. But you see, sometimes the issue has to do with our international relationship. For instance, if Ghana goes to China for a loan facility, sometimes the country is very mindful of some other interests that it has with China. Just imagine somewhere last week or two, I heard of a Chinese man, a philanthropist, who donated an amount of some 50,000 Ghana cedis to the Ghana Police Service. You see, the police service must be resource enough. If a foreigner whose businesses you are not even sure of comes to donate an amount of 50,000 Ghana cedis to the police, and that is able to attract some news headlines in Ghana here. Tomorrow, if that same Chinese person is found guilty of our laws in this country, would you have the moral right to prosecute him?
The police.
The police.
Would they be able to arrest such person?
To arrest
and
prosecute the person. And so sometimes we must refine our processes as a country. I don't know if the story we heard was true somewhere prior to elections where the NPP had to go to China and appeal for funds. If you go to China to appeal for funds to run your campaigns, granted that was true, today what would be your moral right to be able to fight the issue of Galamsey? Even beyond that, you see, Galamsey is bad. Galamsey is bad. It threatens our ecosystem like I indicated earlier. But even the big mining companies that we have in this country, what percentage of the revenue do we retain in this country? It is estimated that about 5% of the incomes are retained here. All the other revenue from our natural resources are sent abroad, and that is unfortunate. We must have a holistic view of the issue. Let's see whether we can get indigenous Ghanaian companies to be able to mine our gold and other resources, and see whether we can even refine them. Because if you would export some of these things in its raw form, either gold or cocoa, of course, subject to international market forces, you cannot be able to realize much from
I see.
From those
and
skills.
for instance, some of you members of parliament have argued that the act provides employment for some members of your constituency. For some of you are on record, and so you caution government to be careful in dealing with it because of the employment it provides. And so it sets the tone for us perhaps not to be able to deal with it.
That will not be a justification. That it provides jobs to some few Ghanaians should not be a justification. We must equally
look. Over 5 million Ghanaians are employed in that in illegal mining.
That I think would be an exaggeration to say that some 5 million or so are engaged in this illegal business. That would be an exaggeration, and that cannot be a justification for that activity. In fact, some NGOs have warned that if we don't stop the issue of the Galamsey, in some few years to come, Ghana will be importing water. If we are going to add the importation of water to our existing import bill as a country, I don't think we will be able to survive. Some water treatment plants of the Ghana Water Company Limited have been shut down because the machines are not able to treat the water from the polluted sources of water. And we must just be careful that, like I said earlier, if Ghana was to import water, then I don't know if we can survive for a month or a year. So we must do everything humanly possible. Whether you are a chief, a politician, a pressman, whoever is involved in this shameful act, must not just be exposed, but be dealt with. I'm sure we have a very effective sanction regime that deals with some of these issues. And we must exact our laws.
All right.
Brian,
finally, wrap up on this one.
The argument that this campaign would damage our relationship with China,
but you know they've already expressed some reservations.
It's very, very weak.
Because
It's very, very weak. First of all, we have to understand that countries cannot agree to make lawful that which is unlawful.
Right.
All right? Illegal mining is unlawful in this country. We are a sovereign state with the power and authority to enforce our criminal sanctions against anybody within our jurisdiction. The Chinese recognize that, same way we recognize their sovereignty to enforce their criminal laws within their jurisdiction. So, engaging in loan agreements with the government of China cannot make illegal mining legal for Chinese. The Chinese understand that perfectly.
They can't push us under the loan to accept certain conditions?
They can't, because such an agreement would become unlawful.
Ideally, that's the situation. But we know that there are manipulations.
The point is that you cannot even contract out of what the public policy recognizes or what the law recognizes. Such an agreement would become unlawful. The Chinese recognizes that we are supposed to enforce our laws.
Can we go back into history? You know the Chinese were deported based on this same issue of their involvement in Galamsey, and yet we found them back on our shores and engaged in the practice.
What that means is that deportation is not the solution to ending the problem. Okay? You do not arrest criminals and deport them. That is not what the law says. When you arrest criminals, you prosecute them, convict them, make them serve their sentence. All right? So once they finish serving their sentence, you deport them. They will never come back. But once you arrest them and you take them out, you have not punished them for committing a crime. You are providing room for them to return. So we must make sure that we enforce the law. Once they are arrested, they should be prosecuted, convicted. What we must not do is to interfere with due process of law. Everybody is entitled to fair trial, whether you are a Ghanaian or you are not a Ghanaian. That we must insist, that when people are arrested, regardless their origin, they must be entitled to fair trial. Once the process is fair and the person is convicted, the sovereign Chinese Republic will recognize that we are a law-abiding nation.
Let's tie in this one because we're told that Galamsey activities have great impact on the amount of cocoa we produce every year. BNFT has a story, 800,000 tons cocoa target to be exceeded. That's according to the chief executive. The story suggests that Ghana is on track to exceed its revised 800,000 ton target for cocoa production due to good rains. That's from Mr. Edu, the new chief executive. Now, purchases in Ghana, the world's second largest cocoa grower, totaled 691,000 plus as of March, and we're told that the new season is expected to increase production. And also, the issue in the story has to do with the statement by the new cocoa board chairperson, chair of the board, Honorable Wusu Hackman, who said 2 weeks ago that last year's $1.8 billion syndicated loan was all gone, and that the country would need to seek more funding to continue purchases for the rest of the season. Now, Mr. Edu said that he's yet to verify Honorable Wusu Hackman's remarks. Two government sources contacted by Reuters dismissed them as politically motivated. That's the remark that all the money, 1.8 billion syndicated loan, was gone. Reuters is suggesting that two government sources dismissed them as politically motivated. And but Cocoa Board will review contract totaling more than 5 billion cedis awarded by Dr. Puni for the construction of cocoa. So those are the issues. But let's first target the issue of exceeding target. Honorable Aziz, now we are told that people are even selling their lands for Galamsey, cutting down cocoa trees. So it means that the attempt at exceeding 800,000 tons itself is threatened.
Perhaps it is because they find it more profitable to surrender their lands to those engaged in Galamsey activities than farming. I think that we should give the cocoa industry more support. It is good news that we are on our way to exceeding our target of 800,000 tons for the 2017 cocoa season. That is good. Well, cocoa is one of our major exports, and I think that we should give it support. But I'm of the view that apart from we giving support to cocoa, speaking of the national economy, I think that we should expand the base of our exports. We cannot rely just on cocoa and timber alone, and now oil. But I think that it is good news that we are exceeding our 800,000 tons of cocoa. We must be interested in getting the youth to engage themselves in farming, especially within the cocoa growing areas, because the fear that people have expressed is that it is only the aged who are engaged in the cocoa farming, and if they age out of strength and the youth are not engaged in it, then we are in for trouble. We should do more to make it more attractive, to see how it will feed into our national economy.
I'm grateful. Khomeini, let's do a quick recall. Government is suggesting, or the chief executive is saying that Cocoa Board will raise about $1.3 billion syndicated loan from banks for the 2017-18 crop season, based on 850,000 tons target. The last time Dr. Opuni went in for another syndicated loan in the last crop season, the concerns were that should we continue to go to these international banks for monies to buy cocoa? Should government not begin to look at perhaps profits that Cocoa Board has made all these years, getting this syndicated loan and power them up and use them to buy the loans? Is government thinking about that?
Well, government is thinking about policies which would enhance the cocoa sector. And there's deliberation going on as to how best to position the sector so that we obtain maximum benefit from that sector. And that includes how to fund the sector. Government is discussing all the available options to make sure that we reposition ourselves as a lead exporter of cocoa in the world, and we're going to make the best of decisions and the best of investment to make sure that we realize these targets. It is not just cocoa alone. The Akufo-Addo government is seriously committed to modernizing agriculture in general and to make sure that young people are attracted to venture into agriculture, because we recognize that over 40% of our working force are employed by these sectors. So what it means is that for us to make significant gains in terms of delivering prosperity for our people, agriculture should be given serious priority. And so it is the vision of the president to make sure that we marshal all the resources so required to make agri a very critical sector of our national economy, and to make sure that we move away from what we're used to into areas that would spur up productivity and contribute to national growth. So we're thinking about a number of interventions like village dams. We're thinking about mechanizing agriculture. We're thinking about making sure that there's ready market for produce from our farms. We're also thinking about making sure that we provide money to young people who are desirous of venturing into agriculture. And just a couple of days ago, the government announced a decision to reduce the price of fertilizer by some 50%. All of these things are intended to make sure that agri plays a significant role in our overall development agenda, and to be able to also deal with rising unemployment. We're thinking about our district factories, because whilst you're spurring up growth in agriculture, there must be market availability for farmers to sell. And you cannot have that if you do not industrialize. All right, industrialization is the surest way. And that's how come we're projecting that industry, for example, would move from the negative 1.6% it recorded in 2016 to a double-digit growth of some 11.2%. So we believe that with the support of agri, we should be able to achieve all of this.
But if you speak to people in agri, they have always raised a concern that, I mean, governments upon governments have talked about modernizing agriculture, and yet we don't seem to get there, and they don't see concrete actions on the ground.
Well, the budget we presented in March made provisions to ensure the realization of these policy intentions that we announced. For example, there's a provision made for the construction of the village dams in the north to ensure that we have all year-round farming. The Honorable MP would agree that the northern economy is heavily dependent on agriculture, and there's no way you can reduce poverty levels in the north if you fail to prioritize agriculture. And so we're committed to making sure that the people, all the tools that are required to make farming very, very attractive are provided this year in order to make sure that we move on as a country.
So
we're determined to do that.
It's not the normal
it's not
rhetoric modernizing agriculture.
It's not, because you see, apart from making, like I said, a few days ago, we announced a 50% reduction in the price. In time past,
well, every government had done that, even though not 50%, but it's always been.
And we beyond that, we're recruiting 5,000 people.
This is not new.
To collect data, because we want to make sure that the interventions that are going to take place this year benefit the farmer directly. In the past, like you said, similar interventions were made to distribute fertilizer. But these fertilizers ended up in the hands of people who are not connected to farming or to agriculture.
It's not going to happen this time.
It's not going to happen this time. In fact, it resulted in a great loot and share situation, because I'm aware, and there's an investigation going on in that regard, that in the past, farmers who were billed to receive 3-4 bags of fertilizer ended up getting one. But entry officers filled in forms indicating that these farmers got 3-4 bags of fertilizer, and people siphoned all of these monies and left the farmer to suffer. We are going to make sure that all of these, things are addressed so that farming is made attractive. It has happened before in this country. You are old enough to know that under the
feed yourself
absolutely. So it is possible to have that once more, and it is possible to make agri an attractive venture for people of Ghana.
Talking about positioning agri as a major economic pillar in this country, you see, subsidizing fertilizer has been a regular practice for a very long time.
But they are doing 50%. Your government, the last government, did about 18% or so.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that it has been a regular practice.
Right.
Now, to indicate that there was some fraud within the fertilizer industry in respect to farmers. For instance, if you argue that people who were not connected at all to farming took some fertilizers, and you ask yourself if they chew them. Obviously, we use fertilizer for only farming.
But they were not for. They want to be given to.
You see,
you can't give. You can't allocate fertilizer to a transport owner.
No, there's no evidence what he's saying.
Yeah, but farmers complain.
But I'm saying
several
that
farmers complain. Even including the spraying of cocoa farms. Farmers complain that they were not getting the chemicals.
Those ones were in the realm of some politicking, where it was alleged that if you didn't belong to the ruling party, your farm will not be sprayed. But I'm saying that fertilizer is used for farming. And so whoever took the fertilizer at the end of the day would find itself into our farmlands.
Are you justifying that?
No, I'm not.
If a farmer is receiving fertilizer and it goes to a transport owner, and the transport owner sells it back to the farmer,
I'm not justifying that. That cannot be justified at all. That cannot be justified at all. We don't have any evidence to the claims he's making. In any case, when you talk about
he says an investigation is ongoing.
No, when you even talk about one dam, one village project in the north, and citing my constituency, in respect of one dam, one village. You see, it is time for this government to get out of their dreamland and get real. You see, you have provided
so one village is not doable.
No, it is not. You have provided an amount of some 89 million Ghana cedis for dams in the 3 northern regions. Let me remind you that it is not a dam per constituency or district. You are talking of villages. In fact, in my constituency, for instance, I have 202 villages. And so what you are telling me is that
they have
between now,
said that in some situations they will construct one dam for maybe a cluster of villages.
No,
But the NPP
you see, we have a party manifesto that talked about a dam for a village, and I'm telling you that we have 202 villages in the Myong constituency.
Yes.
We have 31 constituencies in northern region. You made that pledge in respect of the 3 northern regions.
Yes.
I can imagine the number of villages that we have. Am I you?
And I just reminded you that the NPP has said that in some situations, there could be a dam for a cluster of villages.
You see, you must get it right. They pledge to do a dam in each village.
Your government pledged to build 200 community
That is
schools.
not a justification for their pledge.
Yes, so
today what we have is the NPP regime, and we must be subjecting their pledges to some scrutiny. Now, when you even talk of damming all over in the northern region, the Akufo-Addo Dam takes its feet from the northern regions.
Right.
Are you aware?
Yeah.
And so what will be the effect on the Akufo-Addo Dam?
Well, I don't think that's the kind of dam they're talking about. They're talking about small dugout dams where you can get water
if you construct dams all over in northern region, you are trapping the water in the northern region. What will be the impact on the Akufo-Addo Dam? You are talking of growing industry from minus 1.6 to
double it. He talks about 11%.
11%. How do you do that if you cannot assure the industry of reliable power? And so you must correct your policies. You see, you are now in government. You must get real. This one dam, one village, one district, one factory policy. Why? I'll be happy to see you industrialize our country. I'll be happy to see a factory in Myong. But we are saying that get real. You cannot do 216 factories within 4 years. The Commander Sugar Factory is over $35 million. How can you be able to raise funds? You see, just in the last 2-3 months, you have gone to borrow as much as 2.3 billion Ghana cedis from the Ghanaian market. You are crowding out the private sector.
I see.
You are talking of growing the industry. You must get real, connect your policies, and let's see how you go back. Well, let's see. You are just 3 months old. You still have some goodwill.
Okay.
I'm sure within the next 2-3 months.
Let's wrap up briefly.
He knows that when you go to the north, he comes from Menga, I come from Uli.
The dam is doable.
And he knows that it is not in every village that farming activity takes place.
Okay.
He knows.
In the north?
In the north.
Tell me one village in the north where they don't farm.
If you know that, why did you promise one village?
Tell me one village.
I should have said villages that have
one village.
I'm not
in the north
saying
that don't farm.
There are villages that you will not find farmers. In every village there's a farmer. But it is not in every village that farming activity
takes place.
Goes on. Either because the land is not fertile or because there's no access to water. So you would have a village. All right, in a particular district, a village, where the soil fertility and access to water, that farmers congregate.
Okay. Where?
So
in the north. But where?
For example.
No, just give an example.
For example.
All right.
If you come to Tamale, all right, Tamale.
I'll wrap it up.
I've
hit the top
Tamale
of the hour.
Move out of Tamale into other places to farm.
Okay.
So if you take the Buntanga irrigation dam facility, for example, situated in Buntanga, but it serves farmers from a host of communities in West.
So you are running from you are running from one village one dam now.
All right, gentlemen, I've run out of time. I am so grateful for your time. Agba Komeni is a member of the NPP's communication team, and grateful for your time this morning. Sorry we've run out of time. And then Honorable Mohammed Abdulaziz is a member of parliament for the main constituency. Grateful for your time too.
Thank you.
Hope to see you some other time.